I was born 87 years ago. For 65 years, I've ruled as Tamriel's emperor. But for all these years, I've never been the ruler of my own dreams. I have seen the gates of oblivion, beyond which no waking eye may see. Behold, in darkness, a doom sweeps the land. This is the 27th of last seed, the year of Akatosh 433. These are the closing days of the Third Era and the final hours of my life.
The Elder Scrolls IV: Oblivion is one of my personal favorite games of all time. It reminds me of the classic fun-filled side quests of the original, but with the remastered quality and graphics of the modern era. Oblivion can be described as an open-world RPG that's full of magic and mystery, but can also be devastatingly chaotic and full of aggravating moments. So, with all that in mind, I decided that I severely hate myself, and finding this to be too simplistic, I decided to ask myself the question, can you beat The Elder Scrolls IV: Oblivion Remastered only using spells? To start off our playthrough, I chose to play as a Breton, as they're one of my favorite races to play, and they're quite adept to magic, with a 50% resistance to magic and a 50-point bonus to magicka. Bretons excel as mages, battle mages, and spell-resistant warriors, which is perfect when both your health and combat are dictated by your magicka usage. We need to have a good background in magic if we're going to beat the game. With that now all out of the way, let's continue, as I've spent way too long customizing my character, and all I can say is he looks a little strange. The game begins with your character waking up in a prison cell, getting racially profiled by your neighboring inmate, and bouncing off the walls while using all your mana. Since this challenge restricts my actions to only using spells, I have to level up as quickly as possible. A perk of leveling up an attribute in spells is the magicka cost will decrease with each level. So the more that I use spells, the cheaper they become to use, which becomes crucial when every action we're using is solely based on magic. My instincts told me others were approaching, so I did the only logical thing. I completely hid myself behind a tan jug. I know, it's crazy how I did it. They cheated though by getting a closer look. The jug can only cover so much. Although, I must have gone insane, because I'm pretty sure the jug after that started speaking to me.
Let me see your face. You are the one from my dreams.
Well, come on, man. That sounds like something from the files. After that odd interaction, I panicked in the corner. I never want to see the jug again. I proceeded to test my luck and see what Boris had on him. I don't think he appreciated it that much, nor did his friends. So logically, I decided the only thing to do was to do it again. After that, I booked it clean past them. Eventually, though, they caught back up to me, and I thought we were gonna fight, so I prepared like my fighting idol, Charles Bronson, God rest that man's soul. The senile old man and the guards left me like that one time my mother left me at Walmart. Shortly after, I was adopted by a loving new family, though. Although, they're a bit eager to accept me into their new family, constantly showering me with hugs and nibbling away parts of my flesh. You know, fun times. But hey, all is fair in love and war. which is kind of the reason I decided to be an absolute menace and stole this goblin's entire stash right in front of him. He too was very affectionate and insisted on showing me that he cared through physical interactions. So after being unconsensually touched multiple times, I kind of decided to steal his food, which kind of decided to piss him off, which kind of caused him to call his buddies, which kind of caused me to run. While performing the greatest escape that's ever been performed, I ran back into the old senile man and his guards, and then proceeded to watch them massacre absolutely everybody in a room. After that, I decided to try to talk to a guard, so the senile old man took that as a sign that I wanted to talk to him, which caused me to run away, and like a moth to a flame, this man followed me around. I decided I didn't want to play the game for longer than 20 hours, so I decided to let him talk to me. He immediately began blabbering on about the stars and gods and so on and so forth, and I kind of tuned out because I realized he had lost his mind. Reluctantly, I followed the old man into a corner where he gave me jewelry and then proceeded to make him a promise. I guess his girl was waiting for him because she did not waste a single second to absolutely slime this freak. I decided this was way above my pay grade, chose my specialization as magic for obvious reasons. Intelligence and willpower went as my main attributes to increase my maximum magicka and how quickly that magicka regenerates. I chose alteration, conjuration, destruction, and restoration for my magic skills. Illusion and mysticism really didn't seem that useful for the later stages in the game. I chose athletics, acrobatics, and security as my remaining skills. I entered sewers, continued to use my healing spell, ventured even more sewers, before finding the exit and being born into the world where the real game begins. Immediately I set course for the market district in Imperial City to sell off everything that I had acquired while I was in the sewers. I have no use for weapons, food, potions, or really anything other than spells. So selling all the items that I've acquired will supply me with enough gold to fund the new spells that I decide to add to the arsenal. After my shopping extravaganza, I visited a local inn where I slept, level up, and put 4 points into each strength, intelligence, and willpower. This was to increase my magicka and max carrying weight. I visited a local spell shop and added some firepower to our spell list and realized this entire time that I had an offensive spell. I could be focusing on the fact that I could have been leveling up my destruction instead of my restoration, which would be more helpful in the future, but looking past that absolutely terrible mistake, in search of a horse, I made my way to the stables outside of Imperial City, where I met with Bruma, who gave me a horse and sent me on my way so that the real game could begin. I traveled for a while, just kind of admiring the environment. Eventually I came up to the ruins of a fortress where I began to be chased by some sort of enemy. I kept pushing forward, not looking back, only to notice that there had been a bandit waiting to ambush me. But luckily, the rat that had been chasing me decided to turn its attention towards the bandit. It was a close fight, obviously. After the bandit's ego inflated, he decided to come try to ransom me for 100 gold. So I took this as a perfect opportunity to adjust to spell-only combat. I quickly learned two things. One, I do very little damage, and two, I ran out of magicka extremely quickly. And as we both see and saw, I'm not really the most accurate spellcaster, so I really can't afford to miss. Otherwise, I continue to have these fights where I just keep trying to run around in circles, waiting for my magicka to replenish. You will see this is a reoccurring theme. I also use this moment to realize yet another crucial factor to this playthrough. Different creatures are more resistant to different types of magic. So, for example, I did the same exact base damage with two different spells from being my Frost and Flare spell, but the Flare spell was more effective against my feline friend here, so guess I'll use that. Roasty toasty, catboy. After a very exhausting journey, I finally reached Waynon Priory, where I was to talk to Joffrey about the Amulet of Kings and the Emperor's final words. Joffrey did not believe me until he ripped the amulet from my hands, which I understand, Joffrey. It's treason. I won't forget that you rightfully stole what I had because, you know, possession is 9/10 of the law, so watch your back, Joffrey. After a very drawn out and frankly boring conversation about how the Great Down Under is now invading our world, and how there's also some last-ditch hope to save us all, something to do with, I guess, a priest in Kvatch. I don't know. I really wasn't paying attention, to be honest. The old man tried to bribe me with some upgraded trash, so instead of grocery bags, I guess we've upgraded to soak cardboard. Thanks. After receiving several gifts from several strange men that I've never met before, we can finally begin our quest to find a priest named Martin in a crumbling city, which is where the real game begins. I traveled in a straight line with a marker above my head, as I'm sure is the intended path the game developers intended us to take. While traveling, I noticed that there was a small camp nearby and decided to greet the residents with open arms. I guess they were slightly paranoid, on the account that they met my friendliness with sledgehammers, but other than that small fact, I then proceed to miss every single shot, like a white boy trying to play hoop for the first time, and that went as well as you expected. Due to my inaccuracy, the bandits decided that my horse was more of a threat than I was, so I frantically began trying to eliminate the enemy before my horse was forcefully expired. In the process, I may have seared my horse a few times, but minor damage. After roughly around 10 minutes of running around slowly damaging a single enemy, my horse decided it was okay to steal a kill like it was Modern Warfare shipment, and he's got 3 Red Bulls in front of him and a full night of regret. What were we talking about again? Oh yes, animals rising up against humans. I wasn't exactly sure if this counted as me losing the challenge due to the fact that I let my horse kill an opponent, but due to the fact that statistics weren't changed, I let it slide. Comment down below if you agree or disagree with me, and I'd love your judgment on the decision. Although I didn't personally see an issue with it, apparently my horse's actions didn't sit well with the gods, and they decided to turn his bones into jello, so I took the liberty of leaving him some clothes and took the rest of the journey on foot. Upon my arrival, I immediately noticed a man who looked all too much like someone that I owed money running in my direction, so I decided the best thing to do was to run away from this lunatic. With him hot on my trail, I kept running like my life depended on it, because it does. I am way too broke and I can't afford to pay back any of these debts right now. I guess our friend decided to play the long game by waiting for me at the foot of the mountain. Unfortunately for him, he's never going to see me again. I had a slight suspicion that something might be wrong. The sky kind of was my clue. I ran past some homeless man hanging outside this glowing portal. I was pretty sure he was going to ask me for some spare change, so I decided to just cannonball into the fiery gates. On the other side of the portal, I arrived in Florida during the summer months. I ran into some dude that told me his friends were abducted and held within a tower. I talked with him momentarily before convincing him to tag along. I won't lie, I pretty much forgot I asked him to assist me. Venturing onward, we continued to collect samples of the surrounding area to sell later. Analyze. Somebody decided to play a Home Alone prank on me by throwing boulders off a cliff towards me. I didn't really appreciate that one. I tried to cross a bridge and eliminate an enemy that was blocking our path, even for even more boulders to be hurled down at me. Once again, truly not appreciating this, but luckily I had half a brain cell and simply can just walk around them. Upon entering the tower, we cleared the first floor before continuing our ascension into this Tower of Terror. Hey, that's a pretty good ride in Disney. We battled against the Daedra as we claimed more and more of their territory. We eventually came across a man in a cage, stripped of everything, guarded by a sigil keeper. After our fight with the guard, the prisoner told us on how to close an Oblivion gate, and sent me with most haste to end this flaming nightmare of a realm's existence. Continuing throughout the tower, we fought off more enemies and dodged even more traps. Well, at least I dodged some of the traps. I'll take his clothes for good to honor his memory. I reached the peak of the tower with only a sliver of health remaining. I healed slightly and tried to secure some loot, only to be set on fire and bludgeoned with a mace. Really like that part. I decided classic tried and true method of a speedrunner for just healing, looting, and running. After bobbing and weaving a few enemies, I stole the stone, and reality collapsed in around me. Somehow I got teleported back outside Kvatch, and that homeless guy was still waiting for me, so I took this as a good opportunity to learn conjuration magic. I decided to run to the guards and was deeply unsettled by Mattis's face. Mattis praised me like my dad never did, then convinced me to assist his men in taking back Kvatch. We began to storm the gates. I switched my spell to conjure a scam. I figured it'd be funny to make them fight one of their own kind. It's the sick little things in life that keep me going. In my opinion, Kvatch never looked any better. I summoned a few scamps as Mattis's men fought back the enemy. After an arrow lightly tickled a very inbred-looking Dilophosaurus, he decided this would be a great time to audition for Footloose by breaking out in the dance. Even the guard took one look at him and ran away absolutely petrified. Inside the chapel, Mattis met with his side chick and a plan was placed into action to take back the castle of Kvatch. I decided to put a pin in that conversation. I found Martin, listened to him ramble about being sad or something, didn't really care enough to really pay attention, convinced him he was the Emperor's son, and then proceeded to take him with me to Waynon Priory to meet Joffrey and finally to allow the real game to begin. Back at the Priory, a suspicious dude was being chased by another suspicious dude. I was warned the Mythic Dawn had attacked the settlement. I kept evading and summoning scamps, although I don't think the scamps are too used to being in our world. One kept attacking a water well, and the other decided to give Martin the good old granny treatment from Dispatch. We entered chapel in search of Joffrey. I was absolutely horrified when I watched the true might of Martin as he punched one Mythic Dawn member and sent him flying to the ceiling of the chapel. The Mythic Dawn never stood a chance. After the battle, Joffrey quickly explained the true nature of the attack of the agents and their intentions to steal the Amulet of Kings. As fast as I could with most haste, I found my way to a bed, leveled up, and dumped 4 points into each strength, intelligence, and willpower. And then I decided to go talk to Joffrey about some jewelry. Joffrey confirmed exactly what I had suspected. He was way too incompetent to be doing a single job. That's all I tasked him with. I told him I found Martin, and we set our course for Cloud Ruler Temple, an ancient fortress home of the Emperor's personal guard, the Blades. Joffrey told us Martin would be safe from the dawn there. After all that talk, it made me really tired, so after the conversation, I went back to bed, leveled up, and dumped another 4 points into strength, intelligence, and willpower, stole a dead priest's horse, and rode off to Cloud Ruler Temple. When we arrived, I rode my horse in to assert dominance. I pushed a few of the guards around and paraded in front of them. Joffrey introduced Martin. I stole his thunder by simply just being cooler. Martin gave a speech, and I accepted Joffrey's invitation to join the Blades. My first task as a Blade was to locate Boris in Imperial City. I immediately set course and left at once. I did, although, make a slight detour to the Market District to unload my pockets of all the valuables I'd acquired. I also took a stroll through the spell shop to see if there'd be anything worthwhile or interesting to add to our stockpile. After I sold off everything of value and visited all the local shops, I then set out to find Boris. I stopped by a local pub to grab a drink and didn't fully realize that I'd accidentally ran into Boris. Before I could even fully sit down and settle in, or even order at that rate, Boris interrupted my lunch break and waited for a man to follow him into the basement. I didn't question how that sounded. I just waited for Boris to get up from his stool, wander off to the basement, and as Boris predicted, the man sitting in the corner got up once the basement door had shut behind Boris. He walked over and followed him in. As requested, I followed the man that I was sent to look for by orders of the man who is in charge of a group of men who are all devoted to one man, who is devoted to an older man who I just met moments ago. That is also when I met the man that I'm looking for now by order of a man in charge of the group of men. To have that man come back to the group of men to help them protect the one man who is the son of the older man, who the group of men failed to protect. Are you still with me? Now what was I doing again? Ah yes, murder in a basement. The fight was relatively quick, so afterwards I tried to search the body, but Boris interrupted me to tell me to search the body. I found a Mythic Dawn book on a corpse and presented my findings to my fellow comrade. Boris decided to flex his aura while he told me about the Mythic Dawn and their plans to summon a Daedra Lord into our world. Boris explained how he's been studying and tracking the movements of the Mythic Dawn, which explains the wannabe assassin that's now laying in a pool of his own blood on the floor right now. Boris sent me to the Arcane University and meet with Mark Zuckerberg to discuss the findings of the book. I received the second volume and was pointed in the direction where I could get the third. I went to the Market District in Imperial City, visited the first edition, and talked to the clerk. He had a copy of Volume 3, but promised it to another person, so I did what any logical, insane person would do. I waited in place for an hour straight until the customer arrived. I exposed the truth of the cult of the Mythic Dawn, and he gave me the book immediately, and a location to meet with some agents of the Mythic Dawn to obtain the fourth volume of the book set. I immediately brought this information to Boris, who led me to the meeting place. When we arrived, Boris told me of a vantage point by going up the stairs. As we got into position to attempt an ambush, which this is where I encountered one of the big problems of this playthrough. While the meeting occurs downstairs, two guards slowly make their way from a foreign room onto the walkway in front of where I'm hiding. They also have a torch which allows them to see me easier, so no matter what I tried to do, they would always find me and alert the other agents. I attempted to assist in combat, but my destruction spells do close to no damage. I then switched to my conjuration magic and attempted to distract the Mythic Dawn agents from stabbing me, which would have been a solid plan if it were not for one enemy who decided to give me the Palpatine special. I tried to make a break for it and heal, but the only break I made was my ankle and I got zapped in the ass, which ended up killing me. On the second attempt, somehow they were alerted by my presence through the walls. I don't completely understand this, but somehow I immediately triggered their fighting response. I attempted to assist Boris in targeting the man that he was supposed to meet with, and then we would focus on the others together. But Boris decided to have other plans and fight the other two agents, leaving me to fight Raven Cameron alone, which wouldn't have been a problem if I wasn't so inaccurate with my spells. I noticed that Boris and a member of the Mythic Dawn had both perished. Acknowledging Boris's death, I attempted to search his body in hopes of anything that would help me. There was absolutely nothing. When I finally took my fingers out of his pockets unconsensually for the last time, I turned around and was slashed nearly in half by an agent's sword. After continuing to flee, I began stealing more copies of the books and anything else that I could get my hands on, which reminded me of the entire reason that I was here in the first place. I needed to find the fourth volume in order to progress the story. I continued to try to loop the agents until the worst thing imaginable happened. They became aware of my attempts to loop them, and they split up without me realizing it. Before I could even do anything, I was stabbed in the back and killed instantly. On the third attempt, I tried to prolong them as long as possible before they discovered me by hiding in the furthest corner that I could. When they eventually did find me, this time all three agents decided to expose me first. I guess they were learning how the system worked, so I summoned a scamp in attempts to run away. One agent followed me, continuing to remind me of his unlimited power. While trying to loot an agent, I received the electric chair treatment, but only as a projectile. On the fourth attempt, I tried to hide out of sight by hiding behind the pillars that were supporting the crosswalk. Apparently, the Mythic Dawn has amazing hearing and can hear a needle drop in the crowded office space, because somehow I alerted the agents again. Proceeding to miss nearly every single shot towards them, Raven killed Boris, and in a hasty moment, I managed to kill Raven. Mere seconds before he healed. When I searched his bodies, I took his valuables and came across the fourth volume of the book, which is the whole reason that I began this mission in the first place. I took the keys to the sewers, stole whatever I could off Boris's corpse, and left without ever looking back. When I emerged from the sewers, I happened to notice a small little glitch that had occurred. All of the Imperial City Guard were marked as hostile enemies, but nobody was attacking me. I was unable to speak to any guard. I fled from that district, only to realize that the Imperial Guard throughout the entire city were all hostile against me. I decided to try to load an old save to see if that would fix the problem, only for the problem to continue to exist. So now I was unable to fast travel and wait. Brilliant. I spoke to the lizard people again, who promised me they'd continue to study the 4 volumes, but would need a week time. Which now we see the problem. In turn, I fled Imperial City, fought a mud crab, went swimming, and immediately drowned. In utter desperation, I attempted to de-aggro the guard from me by aggroing the Imperial City waterfront pirates, which caused the guard to step in and intervene. A random civilian also came out of nowhere, decided he wanted the smoke, and threw the most nasty right hook I've ever seen. Unfortunately, though, a woman was walking right in front of it and ended up getting hit. The cat ran away after that, and the guards ended up handling the situation. I ran all the way on foot to a cavern where a bandit attempted to attack me, only to be met with the cold embrace of death. I tried to take a bandit wizard out in a ranged spell battle. It went as well as you anticipated. I fled the cavern. Whilst fleeing, I came across another encampment and quickly dispatched of the residents, and in some quirky, unexplainable sense, this got my aggro glitch to fix itself, which then allowed me to sleep, level up, and dump 4 points into each strength, intelligence, and willpower. After waking up, walking about 40 yards away from camp, and killing a rat, I was absolutely exhausted, so I decided the best option was to sleep, level up, and dump another 4 points into strength, intelligence, and willpower. I decided to give swimming one final shot, It didn't go that well. I returned to the Arcane University, talked to Zuckerberg, read the books for myself because I don't trust those lizard freaks, went to the shrine, waited until noon, and the secret location in the Mythic Dawn's ritual site revealed itself to me. I traveled to the closest location I could, found my horse, and set off to locate the secret Mythic Dawn shrine to track down the Amulet of Kings. In only a few short moments, I arrived at the caverns described to me in the secret message. I entered the cave, spoke to the initiate of the Mythic Dawn outside who let me in, gave everything I owned to a mysterious man named Harrow, and was led into the altar room where Mankar Cameron was giving a speech. I set the sacrifice free, which must have upset them, I guess. Mankar Cameron escaped into his paradise, where I was unable to get to him. I stole his book, and for some reason the game wouldn't let me put it in my inventory, so for a while there I was just running with the book held in front of me. When the game decided to be kind enough to let me put the book in my inventory, I escaped through the door that I'd entered through. When I emerged from the altar room, agents of the Mythic Dawn had been waiting for me, so I tried to make a break for it. I was cornered immediately, tried to summon a scamp to distract the guard, but I guess the AI had grown smarter and they chose to target me instead. I died way more than I would like to admit. On one run, I did successfully steal the tome and kill 3 guards during the ceremony, which did end up helping me with less people firing spells off at me and blocking my path. I stole the important book Martin wanted, looped around the outskirts of the shrine for a little bit, just until I found Harrow, got my stuff back, and completely got turned around and had no idea where I was. I found a passageway that led to some sleeping quarters, so I decided, what's the worst that could happen? I slept, leveled up, and dumped 4 points into strength, intelligence, and willpower. After 43 minutes of agony, I finally returned to Cloud World Temple. Talked to Martin, gave him the book, and he told me to talk to Joffrey about some spies in Bruma. Joffrey sent me to investigate further. I went to Bruma and decided to take a quick detour through the shopping section to unload any useless materials that I may have been carrying. I went to the Mages Guild as well to pick out a few new spells for us to test out. After my shopping extravaganza, I made my way to the Castle Bruma barracks where I found Captain Bird. Captain Bird said nobody has come or gone from Bruma except Gerald, who was returning from some sort of trip. With that being my only lead, I chose to make my way to Gerald's house, which was also locked, so I used a spell to unlock their door. Upon entering, Gerald and his companion immediately outed themselves as agents of the Mythic Dawn and attempted to silence me. I shot Gerald's companion a few times with a new fire spell that I had acquired, which became concerning when I noticed Gerald's companion wasn't taking any damage. Logically, I made a tactical retreat. I led Gerald and the Mythic Dawn associate straight to the Bruma guard, who in turn wasted absolutely no time taking the aggression of Gerald off me. Even the homeless and citizens of Bruma didn't want Mythic Dawn in their streets. Everybody united collectively as one to clean their streets of this scum. Upon Gerald's death, I went to his house to further investigate and find any evidence suggesting that he indeed was a spy. In Gerald's basement, I discovered orders given to him by members of the Mythic Dawn to spy and report their findings. I immediately set off to report my findings to Joffrey. I traveled through the Bruma caverns, escaped through the mountain, and logged off for the night. The following day, I logged back on, completely forgot exactly what I was doing, went to the market district in Imperial City, forgot where the main ingredient was, so I kind of ran around in circles for a few minutes. Finally found it, obtained glowstone dust from the shopkeeper before heading back to Cloud Roar Temple to show Joffrey the evidence that I'd found. He praised me again and suggested that I should talk to Martin to see what progress he made with the book. When I spoke to Martin, he mentioned there'd be 4 items required to open a portal to Mankar Cameron's paradise. The one I was now being sent for was a Daedric artifact. Martin explained the only way to receive a Daedric artifact was from a shrine, so I decided to go to the Shrine of Azura. When I arrived to the shrine, there were a great deal of enemies who had been waiting for me. I again failed to connect around 80% of my ranged spell attacks. Luckily, one of the worshippers took the attention of the wisps. Honestly, I hate those things. They scare the absolute piss out of me. But what scared me even more was how this dog decided to close the distance in order to fight me. That shit is terrifying. After watching the whole club get Swiss cheesed, I tried to hide, but the wisp wasted absolutely no time trying to end my existence. I don't think I've ever tried to run faster in a video game. Will-o-wisps drain your intelligence and willpower, which are both crucial to our gameplay, so I absolutely refused to engage any of them in combat, and if it were anywhere near me, slightly, I would run the opposite direction. I continued running for hundreds of feet. I ran all the way to Shaden Hall, trying to evade my attackers. I ran past some guards outside an Oblivion gate who decided to help me out and eliminate the enemies that were chasing me. I turned back around and checked if the coast was clear, only to watch as this wisp appeared like it was straight out of a horror film. I cannot describe the feeling that I had when I crossed a decent chunk of the map, only to realize this creature had followed me the entire way. With the guards helping dispose of the wisp, I decided in return of solving my problems, I would assist them with theirs. I jumped straight through the portal, woke up in hell, noticed some fancy dead moron was waiting here, and fought some scamp before hurling myself off a cliffside like an absolute madman. When I reached the bottom of the cliffside, I ran into two others who were also attempting to close the portal. Rookies. We began our charge towards the castle. I unfortunately got too overzealous with my own abilities and quickly was humbled by a 1-2 combo. I quickly continued throughout the tower with ease, reaching the top in no time and closing the portal for good. As reality crumbled around me, I threw myself down towards the beam in the center, only to wake up back in our world. Returned to the Shrine of Azula, I was tasked with clearing a cave of vampires who had been there for hundreds of years. In return, I would receive the Daedric artifact that Martin required to open the portal. I accepted on these terms, but before I could proceed with my task, I was ambushed by yet another wisp. I attempted to flee by horseback. I fled all the way to the gutted mine where the vampires were settled. I entered the mines, attempted to attack a vampire, failed miserably, and then fled the cavern. Upon reaching the outside, I prepared to attack the vampire who had been following me. Again, I was seen as less of a threat, and the vampire decided to target my horse. I could do nothing but watch as they viciously attacked my horse. I proceeded to miss multiple shots that could have saved my horse's life, but regardless, they chased him down until they murdered him. I was overjoyed by the floppy physics of the vampire's body upon getting lit on fire. A battle of epic proportions broke out near an Oblivion gate, and the rest of the vampires were disposed of. I found a bunch of random homeless people sleeping outside of a shrine. I swear there's no respect anymore. I forgot to take my meds while I was talking to the statue. As you can see, I kind of was playing with this dead guy's mace. An inanimate statue placed an item into my pockets, and I stole some jewelry off a corpse. I returned to Cloud Road Temple and immediately slept, leveled up, and dumped 4 points into each intelligence, willpower, and endurance. I wanted to boost my maximum health and stamina. I barged clean past the guard into Martin's room. I gave him the Daedric artifact. In return, he told me to go speak to Joffrey. Joffrey awoke from his sleep and chose to aura farm, sending me down to Bruma to deal with the Oblivion gate opening outside the city walls. I met with the Bruma guard outside the portal, spoke to Captain Bird. I guess the guard wanted the hero of Kvatch to assist in closing the gate. Bird said some words, and I wanted to get started. This video is long enough as is, so we wasted no time going straight to hell. We were met with Daedric creatures standing in our path. They were quickly expired. We continued our assault on the tower. With me casually passing by most of the enemies, I made my way to the top with relative ease. We removed the sigil stone and shut the gate to Oblivion. As reality crumbled around me, I watched as Bird got cornered by 3 flame matriarchs. What a lucky dude. With the gate shut and Bruma now safe, Bird thanked me for some reason. I was mesmerized by a pile of corpses for a couple minutes when I snapped back to reality. I visited Bruma's Mages Guild in search of new spells and decided to start working on one of the most annoying quests in Oblivion. Upon closing the portal in Bruma, a portal opens up outside each of the named cities in the game. There is a quest name called Aid for Bruma, which is why I hold a love-hate relationship with this game. To progress the main story, it is your job to go to each and every one of these portals, shut them, and ask for aid in an epic battle that will take place in the not-so-distant future. If you're wondering what's going on behind you, I decided to jump into the molten mac and cheese multiple times. It was too much for my mortal body every time, and I decided it must have been a fluke, so I tried it again, and again, and again, and again. This time, I was just an idiot. I proceeded to spend the next 20 minutes attempting this single jump, simply because I was too lazy to figure out how to do it the actual way. Inside the tower, I faced very little resistance, took the power stone. Ah, shit, wrong franchise. Reality collapsed in around me. Then I traveled to Burville and repeated the exact same process. All of the rest of the cities are somewhat the same. Run through the portal, gawk at the environment, grab a stone, ask for some troops. Simple enough process. Our old pal Kvatch, yeah, you remember that burning pile of rubble that was labeled a city from like pretty much the start of the game? Kvatch chose to be the problem child during this quest. Acknowledging I could no longer escape my destiny of reclaiming the castle of Kvatch, unenthusiastically, we left the chapel, to which I realized a minor detail. Since I prolonged this section of the game, the enemies no longer were weak, easy to kill scamps, and now posed more of a serious threat. Mattias informed me that the castle gates had been sealed. He also told me of a secret passage that some guard that was still in the chapel for some reason had a key for. I returned to chapel, where I was greeted by the Imperial Legion soldiers passing by who offered to assist us. The creepy and arrogant guard who kept the key leapt into action after I accidentally implied that he was slightly important. In the chapel undercroft, we were quickly overrun by flame matriarchs. This is when my concerns of my level had begun to grow. I had just hoped at that time the guards would be strong enough to stand their own, at least for a little bit, so that we can make some progress. We fared no better outside of the chapel. With enemies in absolutely every single direction, it became total and utter chaos. I turned around just in time to watch the last of my allies get cut down in front of me. I grabbed the key and attempted to assist in what remained of my forces before watching them get brutally murdered too. I used the key, entered secret passage, and opened the gates to allow Mattis and what remained of our men to storm the gates. The very moment those gates rose, all hell was unleashed. A courtyard full of hellish spawn clashed against the small Kvatch resistance. During the fight, Mattias took a nap. Inside the Great Hall of the castle, I may have taken out Mattis' side piece. My mistake, bro. Mattias looked as if he was holding back his tears, but he continued through his work. And when I mean he continued through his work, I mean he ordered me to go find the Count of Kvatch, who Mattias, for some unexplainable reason, still thinks would still be alive. I found the Count laying in a pool of his own blood in his bedroom, stuck my fingers into his pockets, stole whatever he had on him. I returned to Mattias, who for some reason gave me all his clothes when I gave him the Count's ring. Finally, after 4 hours of traveling to and from each and every single city to close the gates outside their walls in order to receive aid for Bruma, I was finally free and able to return to Cloud Ruler Temple, where I found a bed and I slept, leveled up, and dumped 4 points into each intelligence, willpower, and endurance. I spoke to Martin. Apparently one of the final items that is required to open the portal is some god's mortal juice. Luckily for us, some of that stuff was stained on an ancient piece of armor. I spoke to Joffrey before departing to recover this ancient relic. He warned me that 4 of the mightiest blades had gone to this location before, but had never returned. Lovely. Before I departed, I slept, leveled up, and dumped another 4 points into intelligence, willpower, and endurance. Was rudely body blocked and antagonized by some other guard, and then left to retrieve a fit from thousands of years ago. I also received a FNAF scare by a mountain lion, before eventually arriving at the ancient fortress that holds one of the last items required to enter Mankar Cameron's paradise. The outside was littered with the skeletons of the warriors who fought long ago at this fortress. Inside the stronghold, my senses told me this place might be haunted, so I did a quick exorcism just to be safe. I then healed up before continuing throughout the next section of the stronghold. When I entered that room, I quickly remembered I'd forgotten an entire section of this mission, so I had to turn back around and complete unaliving the undead. I found a ghost who talked to me about having his soul set free. That lying son of a bitch sent his mortal body after me to murder me, so I cremated that goddamn corpse. I put on my yarmulke when I saw the price tag of his gear. I remembered all of these riches in this stronghold were promised to me over 3,000 years ago. So I decided to attack the undead before they attacked me. I would never off myself. This is a joke, please. BB, do not send a missile to my house. After returning to the Spearmint Halls, I guess some of the other residents weren't too keen on being left breathing, so I quickly assisted them with that challenge. After retrieving the relic and making my way back to Cloud Ruler Temple, I slept, leveled up, and dumped 5 points into agility and endurance, with 2 going into strength. I gave Martin his ancestor's relic, and he thanked me by giving me yet another task to complete, to which I heavily debated selling all of his books right in front of him. I traveled to the closest point I could, set foot to retrieve the final piece of the puzzle in order to reach Mankar Cameron's paradise. On my travels, I passed by Daniel and Cade, who stopped by to say hi. It's crazy how accurate they were able to nail their looks. Good job, Bethesda Studios. You guys really did good on this one. After I torched some dummies and entered the stronghold, I was rather amused by the physics of this goblin. Deeper inside, I shot some fireworks at some brain-rotted kids. Happy America Day, motherfuckers! I somehow found myself in the middle of a war between the goblins and the skeletons. For some reason, unbeknownst to me, I decided to join in for the fun. The goblins were quickly defeated, although they did make a valiant effort, especially the one archer who assisted me in sacrificing his own life for mine. Thank you for your service, and it will be forgotten. After I re-murdered the last enemy, I grabbed a fancy rock and made my way to an even fancier, questionably shaped glowing rock. As I went to make my great escape, some Lich King-looking motherfucker decided to aura farm on his entrance. He decided to pose nothing but a headache for me in a fight that felt like it lasted forever. Who's laughing now, you wrinkly-ass bitch? I made my way back to the Imperial City to sell all my earnings from battle, only for some random agents to chase me down who did not identify themselves, called me a criminal, and extorted me for money before hauling me off and searching all my valuables. To be perfectly honest, I don't remember what crime I committed. Before I even got to leave the prison, or even really get a chance to comprehend what kind of corrupt government actions were in play, an assassination attempt was made on my life. 2 Mythic Dawn agents greeted me at the entrance to the prison, where they drew arms and tried to silence me on the spot. After an anticlimactic but very valiant attempt on my life, the assassins unfortunately failed in their mission to kill me. With a newfound urge to end the Mythic Dawn for that pitiful excuse of an assassination attempt, I raced to Cloud Ruler Temple, where I slept, leveled up, and dumped 4 points into strength, 3 into agility, and 5 into endurance. When I finally started to get moving, I went upstairs to check on Martin. When I saw he wasn't in his room, I became exhausted all of a sudden, so I decided to sleep, level up, and dump 5 points into each strength, endurance, and the remaining 2 points were going into agility. When I awoke, I went to go speak to Martin. I found him geared up in his dead ancestor's armor. Martin decided overnight to throw a full-scale war with Oblivion. I don't think any of us voted for this. I didn't think he was actually serious about it, so I decided to entertain thought for the time being. We set off for Bruma to meet with the Countess, where we would discuss Martin's plans. When I met with her, she said exactly what everybody is thinking, and she did not pull any of her punches.
This prince? Emperor? Martin would risk my whole city to gain a great sigil stone?
I gotta give it to him. The voice acting in this game, I can never grow tired of it. It is always hilarious to see how they react in some of these lines. On our way to meet with Martin in the chapel, I think I came to the conclusion that the Countess doesn't leave the castle very often. Come on, Bird. I didn't even look away for a second. Inside the chapel, I decided to get blessed by some god that was foolish enough to believe that I was here to do some good. The Countess and Bird joined me in the chapel. Unlike Martin, with his newfound so-called birthright, deemed himself too important to meet us to discuss the plans of the battle. The people of Bruma gathered to usher me to go to hell. As I left the castle gates, I was extremely confused as to where all the men that I'd asked to help had gone. So I figured I'd travel to the battlegrounds, where I figured the remaining of our troops would be waiting for me. So imagine my surprise when I saw an open gate to Oblivion in the middle of the battlefield and absolutely not a human soul in sight. After waiting for about 3 minutes, the so-called army that I assembled decided to finally show up for the war. Better late than never, I guess. It's only hell on earth, but hey, take your time, boys. After we all gathered and stood in formation for an hour, until Martin finally decided to be done polishing his fancy armor. Oh, Martin had something to say.
Blah, blah, blah. Proper name, place.
Oh shit, the battle began. This was going to be humanity's great stand against hell itself. Since Martin decided to ramble on, I'll give you the cliff notes on the battle's purpose. We have to hold the Daedric armies back long enough for a great gate to open, where then it's my mission to enter and remove the sigil stone like always. It'll be a piece of cake, and this time we'll be one step closer to unlocking Mankar Cameron's paradise. Jesus Christ, this is a long game. After many casualties on both sides, I decided to help the guard hold the line against one final creature of nightmare fuel before entering the Great Gate. I immediately noticed something was greatly different about this gate to Oblivion. For starters, I was digging the addition of the new walking siege weapon. I don't know, guys. I didn't know Dremor were cool like that. I wasted no time immediately scaling all of the walls possible. If there's one thing that I've learned while playing the Elder Scrolls, it's that there's always an unconventional way to get to where you want to go, and 9 times out of 10, it's going to be 10 times faster. By the time I reached the main tower's entrance, I barely used up 3 minutes. In the lobby of the Sigil Tower, I attempted to take out the guards, but had quickly realized that they were a touch stronger than I had anticipated. Further in the tower, I encountered encountered a slight obstacle that posed more of a problem than it should have. The sigil keeper on this floor has a sword that's poisoned with paralyzing agent, so one hit with it and I become nothing more than helpless sheep. My second attempt fared no better, or the third. After an agonizingly long time, I finally made it to the Great Sigil Stone, while reality collapsed in around me. The Daedra were determined to not let me leave alive, even if the gate was closing. They chased me until a last-ditch effort. I plunged straight into the consuming brightness in hopes to return home. When I returned to the battlefield, I watched as the portal barely closed in time to destroy the siege machine before it fully emerged from the Oblivion Gate. I assisted in defeating the remaining Oblivion forces before the portal spontaneously combusted in synchronization. I looted the corpses of the fallen soldiers of the battlefield before Martin interrupted me, telling me to meet him back at Cloudroar Temple whenever I was ready to retrieve the Amulet of Kings from Mankar Cameron. I returned immediately to Cloudroar Temple, where I immediately slept, leveled up, and dumped 5 points into Strength and Endurance, with 2 remaining points going to Agility. Upon entering the Great Hall of the temple, I found Martin setting up the final preparations to open the portal to Paradise. He told me that once I had entered Paradise, the portal would become unstable and close behind me, so I would have to find another way to return on my own. With my goal being retrieving the Amulet of Kings, I was ready to put all these Daedric shenanigans behind me and enter Mankar Cameron's Paradise. Martin opened the portal, and I stepped into Paradise. I took a brief moment to admire the environment before immediately ransacking every last collectible item in sight. The voices in my head began speaking to me again. I guess I forgot to take my meds, but I chose to ignore them as per usual. I ran into somebody who I may or may not have killed before. I don't know, there's way too many to count. I kept pressing forward, only for a spider nightmare creature who didn't attack me to pass me on the bridge. I decided to sneak a peek and see where the spider had gone. I proceeded to watch as this spider and its tiny little spawn bullied a resident of the Paradise. I'm already starting to see the appeal of this Paradise Mankar Cameron keeps talking about. After the creatures were successful in murdering another resident, I watched as the baby turned and targeted me at Mach speed. So help me God, I screamed so loud. It was embarrassing. I bumped into an intelligent demon that was capable of speaking, but I watch freerun, so I know demons only speak in lies, so I quickly dispatched of him. I stole some more jewelry off his corpse and decided, you know what? Let's see how they fit on me. Only to realize that a red glow released around them, and I was unable to take them off. I entered the Undercroft of Paradise and watched as the door got sucked into a black hole. Honestly, that shit kinda threw me off guard. I proceeded to face problems again and again and again and again and so on the entire time. The man that I was sent here to kill was also monologuing in my ear, so that was pissing me off. This is exactly why I would never put a chip in my head. Somebody could just hack in, rickroll me, and what am I gonna do? Hit pause? I can't, they hacked it. Some creepy old looking elf dude, who again I may or may not have killed, I don't remember, approached me and offered to free me from this terrible fashion choice that was trapping me inside these caverns. I don't remember exactly what his name was, but I do know he offered to help me defeat Mankar Cameron and retake the Amulet of Kings, but I'm not gonna lie to you, I'm 99% sure this man died before we even left the Undercroft, and if he didn't, he helped that little. The daughter of the man that I was sent to kill, who I know I've definitely killed before, and totally not because she told me, met me outside of Mankar Cameron's palace. I listened to some of what Mankar Cameron had to say until I was suddenly reminded how much I've grown to hate his voice over this past couple of minutes. So my caveman brain was about to do what it always does, and it was about to go in fight or flight mode, only for me to turn around just in the nick of time to dodge an incoming attack that was coming from behind me. Luckily, one of Mankar's men were more than happy to sacrifice their life to defend this place. Unfortunately for Mankar, his men were weak. I disposed of the threat before turning my attention to Mankar, only for him to animation cancel my attack. That sleazy bitch. Which immediately put me on a massive disadvantage. I decided one last trick that I could play to gain a little bit of time to regain a little bit of my health and magicka. I proceeded to jump from chandelier to chandelier like a capuchin monkey in a jungle gym. Though this prolonged the fight by about 20 minutes, I was eventually caught in a corner with the slightest bit of health. In a very desperate attempt, I focused all my remaining magic on Mankar, which in some miracle, or I think the game just pitied me, killed the host of the paradise. I quickly retrieved the Amulet of Kings, and Mankar Cameron's paradise crumbled around me as I returned to Cloud Ruler Temple to speak to our soon-to-be Emperor, Martin. I was welcomed back ceremoniously by the Blades who had gathered around where the portal once stood. Martin approached me, proceeded to babble on like some high school anime character who was drawing out a story for absolutely no reason, and we set out our way to Imperial City to speak to the Elder Council to swear Martin in as Emperor. I awaited impatiently inside the Elder Council chambers for Martin to finally arrive. As per usual, Martin decided to take his sweet-ass time. I guess the High Chancellor also got fed up with Martin and took one side of him entering the building as acceptance to begin. Martin was hastily sworn in as Emperor. Just as Chancellor was about to say the final words, a guard interrupted the Chancellor. Daedra had broken into the city and have spawned portals inside the walls. The city was now under attack, and Martin devised a plan to get to the Temple of One before it was all too late. As we agreed on Martin's plan, Daedra breached chambers, with the guards and I jumping immediately into action. We quickly dispatched all the demonic entities. I watched the High Chancellor try to pull a fast one and try to leave all the fighting to us. I caught him red-handed in the act too. I know what you're up to, you dirty little rascal, you. As we left the chambers, we realized that our worst nightmare had come true. A full-scale invasion of the capital city was upon us. We bravely fought on a united front to secure the palace perimeter. Once the enemy was defeated, Martin reaffirmed his need to reach the Temple of the One. As we pushed forth through the city, it was engulfed in all fire and brimstone. A nightmare had finally become reality, as rubble littered everything around us. As Daedric armies rampaged through the streets, I watched as a demonic body vanished right before my eyes, and was quite confused as to why I wasn't able to loot the corpse. We continued to make our stand to the very last man. I watched as the High Chancellor got sacked harder than a 9-year-old Make-A-Wish kid getting denied a touchdown. Our forces fought bravely till the end, but unfortunately they were no match for the Oblivion beings, and we found our reserves had dwindled to a very low, dangerous amount. I pushed forward to see what lies in our path to the Temple of the One, only to find the Daedric Prince of Destruction had arrived in Tamriel. With the barrier now fully destroyed, lighting the dragon fires would do nothing to protect us now. Martin hesitantly told me to get him to the temple in order to enact one final hope. I agreed to get him as far as I could, only to immediately get stomped by a giant foot. Inside the Temple of the One, Martin brought me aside, said his farewells, and entrusted me to look after Tamriel. As Martin enacted his final plans, Mehrunes Dagon tore off the roof of the temple. In a last-ditch effort, Martin crushed the Amulet of Kings and turned, mixing his blood with the blood of the gods, and transformed him into a higher being, giving Mehrunes Dagon a run for his money. With Martin ending the fight by giving Mehrunes Dagon a golden shower before Martin turned rock hard, leaving me completely unsure if I had been the Elder Scrolls 4, Oblivion Remastered, only using spells. Leave a like if you enjoyed this video or found it entertaining or educational. Dislike if you didn't. This video was made in memory of Paul Mitten Squad, who inspired me to partake in this grueling challenge. His link will be down in the description below. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I truly hope you guys enjoyed the video. I'll see you all next time where I'll be skydiving wearing no parachute.